Welcome, guys, to the 23rd episode of Twin Lenses. With me today we have Shimmy. Shimmy, today we'll be talking about technique, exercise selection, and volume. First, I would like you to tell us about yourself and your training journey, please.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's absolutely an honor to be on. It's very cool to interact with people all over the world. Andre has told me he's in Portugal, so that's pretty awesome because I'm in South Florida. So, a little bit about me. I'm an online fitness coach, content creator, personality, I guess, at this point. And I post all kinds of content regarding technique, training, nutrition, recipes, the random movie music references. And I've been doing that online for at least a few years now. I was an in-person coach for a majority of my working career, so I trained people in person for almost 10 years. And then I decided to pivot everything to online, making fitness content, coaching people online a couple years ago. And it's been a wonderful experience. I've absolutely loved it. And I can't wait to kind of keep doing it and keep seeing where it goes.
Did you stop doing the one-on-one training?
Yeah, so for the most part, I don't train people in person anymore. Here and there, I have a few choice clients, but the bulk of my coaching now lives online. So, I have a roster of clients that I work with monthly all over the world. And you guys know who all listen to this podcast. You know the online coaching game. So that's what I do. And yeah, I mean, South Florida, I have a few here and there. But the in person stuff is by no means a full time thing.
Shimmy, have you ever considered competing? I know you have awesome
Yeah,
physique.
so a lot of people, especially in the last year or so, have really championed me going to the stage. To be very honest, I don't have a big interest in competing. I enjoy the process of training for what it is. I like getting very, very lean. I think that's cool from photo shoots. If any of you guys follow me on Instagram, it's Shimmy93 on Instagram. I have some photos of there for my photo shoots from last year, and I think the look was pretty cool. Could I have dieted for a month more and then got on stage and done decently in natural ranks? Maybe. Some people that are smart tell me so, but the shaving my whole body, the oiling up my body, the showing my muscles to strangers in underwear. It's real weird to me. Like I don't, I'm not such a fan of it. Will I do it? You never say never, but it's not something that gets me really excited.
Nice to hear that. So, Shimi, I see most of your content that you share is about technique. In your opinion, how important is someone technique and how impactful can it be for their results? If you can
Sure.
say.
So I think that depending on the person, technique can be very important or it can be not that important. Fortunately or unfortunately, the way that I seem to think about technique is basically based on a needs analysis. So if something is working as it is, and we see this with people that have really amazing physiques and subpar technique, if it's working for them, they never needed to delve deeper. They never needed to delve into the nuances of technique optimality, technique efficiency, higher movement quality, because whatever they're doing got them heaps and heaps of gains. Now, I obviously have a bias. Could they be better off with higher quality technique, less injury, bigger muscles, trained for longer? I do think so. But I also don't lie to myself. I don't think that technique optimization is everything. I think that it is a part of the puzzle. And I don't think that I would box technique in, or rather box technique out, to being more important than saying training for years without getting injured, or making sure that you're eating significant amounts of food in a calorie surplus for a period of time to put on significant muscle, or making sure that you're sleeping enough, keeping your stress down. Once you've done all of those things, then we can discuss the nuances of technique.
But it's something that for your clients that you take a lot of consideration on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, probably because of the nature of my content, a lot of people that find me that want to work with me are because they really want to refine their movement quality, want to refine their exercise selection, just how good they train. So maybe my content leads toward that. Yes. But I find that a lot of times with people, The technique is usually decent. We clean up the nuances absolutely as we go through the process, but a lot of times it's just more of the full scale when people come to work with me. So it's about just basically buckling down on everything and having someone that holds them accountable on a consistent basis that they trust.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I think there's this is my opinion, and I want you after your opinion as well. But like you said, people get results, but I think it's different from like a natural status to a unnatural status, right? Because maybe people are getting results, but like you said, they could be getting maybe much better results with better technique.
I might even make the case that technique efficiency or technique optimization, if I want to call it that, would be more important for somebody that's enhanced versus someone that's natural, because someone that's more enhanced is likely bigger and stronger, so they have more room or more opportunity to hurt themselves.
Yeah,
Now I
makes
understand the numbers are all relative, but a 200 or kilos, so a 100 kilo male or 110 kilo male or an 80 kilo female, they're probably quite big, probably quite strong, using loads that are not light. For them, the risk to reward of those heavier loads might not be as favorable. There might be a much higher risk of injury. So for them, really optimizing their movement quality and technique would be of prime importance as compared to somebody who's natural, where, yes, natural, again, it's all relative, but the loads that they're lifting, it's not as likely that you would get hurt.
normally when you are exercising, for example, you're doing like a chest press, do you think about your technique, or it's something like you don't think while performing the set?
As in, am I thinking about my technique with
Yeah,
every single rep that I do?
yeah, that's what I was asking about.
Right. So I think it can be. I'll answer it for in general, then I'll answer it for myself. I think
Yeah,
the question is almost similar to in the nutrition space of like tracking macros versus being intuitive. I think for many people, they can have to track macros very seriously for a predetermined or undetermined period of time. And once they feel most comfortable, they maybe don't have to track as closely because they have an idea. And I think with training, for a lot of people, it's like that. Like if you're really, really mindful about every single elbow position, every single arch, every breath, and you're mindful of that for a little while, eventually it can become a little bit more intuitive. For me, I think about the stuff every single rep, every single set, all the time, but it's no stress for me to do that. Like, I'm always trying to get the most out of every single thing that I'm doing. And even though I've been lifting weights for 15 years at this point, and I coach people and whatever, I still am very, very mindful of every single movement that I do, every single repetition, every single set, because the way that I think about it is the better that I can do everything, number one, the more I'm going to get out of it. And then also, like, not for nothing, probably the less that I'll need to do, because if the movement quality is so high, I'll be able to likely get away with less, right? Junk volume is a thing.
yeah.
So if I'm not 100% locked in to everything that I'm doing, then I may run the risk of having to do more like lackluster work. Really, really being intentional, I think, pays really, really big dividends from a movement quality and volume standpoint.
And for curiosity, do you still track your macros, or it's something that you?
Yeah, so I will tell you this past massing phase has been the first time that since I've started tracking macros 15 years ago, that I have not tracked every single meal every single day. I do track, yes, but I'm not every single meal militant. And every single phase that I've had of training up to this point, nutrition wise, I've done that. And I'll give you a reason. It's intentional. The reason why is because I am no longer actively pushing my body weight up to levels that I've never been to before. So therefore, getting to these body weights now in my massing phase that I'm ultimately striving for, I've been there before and I know I can do it, and it's really just not that hard. So if you want me to put pen to paper on this, if you're curious, the highest that I've ever pushed my body weight is 98 or 99 kg, something like that. And if I'm honest with you, it really just wasn't a very fruitful experience. I think that I probably could have done 5 to 7 kilos less and had the same muscle mass. But you never know until you know. And I recommend everyone at least once or twice to push their body weights to levels above where they should be, just so you know, because everyone's different. For some people, you can push your body weight up high and it just concords with that much more strength and muscle gain. For some people, it's not the case, but you won't know until you know. So I've pushed my body weight up that high, and that was a few massing phases ago. And since then, I've actually started to push my body weight a little bit less and less, just by a couple kilos each time, to ultimately find the sweet spot. Sweet spot being defined as where I'm still able to make strength gains, where I feel amazing, sex drive is amazing, energy is amazing, and I don't have to diet forever to get very, very, very lean. Now, there's also a requirement here that you had to have gotten very lean to know what that's like, right? If you've
Yeah.
never been really, really lean before, you don't really have a baseline to be like, oh, well, it takes me at this body weight range to be lean. But once you have been, you can just go above that by maybe, 8 to 10 kg as a natural. I don't really see value so much above that. Just more dieting, you know?
Yeah, it makes sense. And you can say like from your experience, the 15 years, it was always trying to push higher limits.
It should have been. It wasn't like that the whole time. I was one of those people, I'm sure you coach people online, right? That's what you do? Right. So a lot of your clients, a lot of people that listen to this podcast or that are going to see this post on social media, a lot of you are scared to put on body fat because you want to have abs all the time. I get it. I was there for years. I thought I could be the one that I can maintain because I know things and I train hard, so it's not going to be the same for me. And it was. For years, I stayed at around like 84 kg or 83 kg with decent abs, whatever. And that was definitely time that I missed out on from a gains perspective. So a little bit about my training history. So I pushed my body weight up intentionally in a mass one time, and then I was like, I don't like this. I don't like this. So dieted down and then stayed there for a few years. And only after a few years was I like, okay, I need to give another crack at this massing thing and do it the right way. And then the train was sort of left the station, and then it was, now normal massing, cutting, maintenance, whatever.
You said like you stayed for some years with the same same weight. How did you find the motivation to like for training and like staying the same?
Because so number one, I wasn't always very, very evidence based. None of us all were, right? I didn't consume the best content. And I convinced myself, like so many well intentioned people do, that if I train hard and I eat healthy and I'm young, I was in my late teens and early 20s at the time, shit's gonna happen. That's it. It has to happen. And I was wrong. And also the motivation, you know, being someone in your early 20s, having abs, it's, for girls, they like that,
Yes, yeah.
right? So you don't want to not have abs, right? So that was also a thing. I don't want to lose my abs. I don't want to lose this look. This is a unique look. And eventually I grew up.
It's nice to hear that.
Yeah.
Shimmy, we'll be back about this, but we'll be going again with the technique. I will ask you, for beginners, do you think the best or the most important aspect that they should focus on is the technique?
Great question. I think that the biggest thing that beginners should focus on is actually adherence. Finding ways to not stop, finding ways to weld training into their daily life and actually look forward to every single training session, whatever it takes them to get there. Once adherence is set and they really enjoy the training process, then you can delve into technique. Yes. And I think that giving beginners technical cues that are very simple, easy to implement, and not overloading them with too many cues at one time is really, really important. They don't know what they're doing. The gym is a scary place, or maybe it's an exciting place where there's so many things happening around them. To inundate a potential trainee with several cues is just a fool's errand and a waste of time, honestly. Even though it feels nice to do, and they're going to look at you and they're going to go, oh, this is so cool. I got it. Great. They're not going to got it. They ain't going to got it. Or they say they will then, and then next time they'll forget everything you said. So rather than that, keep it simple. So to answer your question, adherence first. Get buy-in. Make them love being in the gym. So when I coached beginners, and even nowadays, if I ever coach a beginner, friend, whoever, everyone knows me that I'm a whatever extroverted, exciting, funny guy. I double down on that even more when I'm coaching a beginner. I want to make it fun. I want to make it exciting. I want them to associate the gym with a good time, a fun time, and we're also getting healthier and stronger in the process. Once you can do that, then yes, technique is of the utmost importance. The stronger of a foundation that you set, the longer something will last and last well with quality. So most people, like you, like me, I don't know that you've done this, but I'm sure you have. We've recycled our technique 87,000 times. I want you as a beginner to recycle your technique less than that. Less than that. So I think that, yes, technique is very important after you get the buy-in. And then I'll do you one more. Also, not overwhelming the trainee with too many exercises. So I've gotten this question on my Q&A before. People be like, for a beginner, how many exercises? Or do you think a beginner should have a periodized program? I think periodization is important for a beginner.
Don't worry.
I
Everything
think I
okay?
just broke something in my couch. I think periodization is really important, but giving the beginner a certain set of exercises, not changing them, and just having them get good at those movements for a while, a long time, not even really building on volume, just keeping with those foundational exercises, whatever you determine them to be, I think is really, really important as compared to giving someone something new every single time to make it fun. For adult fitness, for a client that's got to get in shape in 3 months and hates training, I get that. But if you're coming into the gym and you want to really make this a lifestyle and get good at lifting and change your body for years and years, or potentially, again, for life, I think doubling down on a certain set of exercises is really important.
It makes a lot of sense. Shimmy, I will ask you, can you give us a good definition, if you can, of course, of what's a good technique in your consideration?
Sure. So this is very important to answer in the appropriate context. Are we saying good technique for hypertrophy?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I can take this two different ways. If I was to find good technique in general, it's to provide the optimal movement quality for the task at hand. So to yield the most results with the least amount of injury. So I think that would be the general definition of technique for me. For physique, it would be the exercise or the way to perform a movement that yields the most pump, soreness, and disruption with the least amount of time wasted.
Makes sense.
I think
Yeah.
that's pretty good, right? That's good. I think that's pretty damn good.
Good job.
Yeah, thanks.
And the last question that I will ask you about the technique, what were the most important things that you changed about technique in the last few years?
The last few years. Define few years. Last 2, last 5?
5 years. If you
5
can
years.
give us like one
The
example.
answers are different. The answers would be different. The things that I've changed the most in the last 5 years is I've really doubled down on the exercises that truly feel the best for me. So short form, the most stimulus to fatiguing ratio exercises for me. And you can only really know that after you've been lifting weights for a very long time to really know what that is.
About technique, if the question is about technique and not exercise selection.
Excuse me.
If you don't.
Yeah, no worries. The things that I've changed the most about technique in the last 5 years. So one that comes to mind, and this is not supported by the research, it's really just for myself. I've really doubled down on end range pausing for most of my exercises, not for necessarily every single exercise, but for myself and for most people, I really have found that pausing fully at end ranges for majority of exercises really yields a better mind muscle connection, better pump, and dare I say better soreness, and the ability to use even less load but generate potentially the same or more stimulus doing so. Again, that's not supported by research. In fact, I think the research is ambivalent on that. But that's something that I found. I used to do pauses for sure, but I've become, I think, a little bit more of a zealot with pauses. Let me see if there's anything else in the last 5 years. Yeah, this again might blur the line between exercise selection and technique. So of course, again, like stop me if I go there.
Mandatory.
Yeah, but anything that yields a little bit of discomfort, I just don't do it. And not from a muscle standpoint, but maybe joints, tendons,
Joint,
ligaments.
yeah.
Whereas maybe I might have pushed through a little bit more 5 years ago in the name of this movement is good. I know it's good. I should be doing it. To now, I only do the things and recommend the things that if they feel good, that's what you do. And if they don't feel good, there are a bajillion exercise variations. You don't have to high bar squat. You don't have to deficit deadlift. You don't have to bench press, right? You have to just find the things that you love, double down on those. So again, that's a little mix of exercise
Yeah.
selection and technique too. The slow eccentric stuff, I think I always, not always, but certainly in the last 5 years, I've definitely done that. Probably now a little bit more so. I just really find for myself that a more controlled or even slower eccentric or lowering of the weight, it really just feels great. It really just, it feels like it's the right way to do things.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you for your explanation. Now we'll be talking about the exercise selection. Okay, Shimi.
Sure.
One of the best takeaways that I learned was that exercise selection means that some exercises are better than others, but at the same time, personal preference, like you said before, and variation are important. Do you
Yeah.
agree with that?
Yeah, I would absolutely say that. I think variation and personal preference are important. Yes, absolutely. And in the context of exercise selection and making sure that you have a a a bag full of appropriate variations that you like that feel really, really good that yield an awesome stimulus to fatigue ratio for you, for sure.
And one exercise can be better than other to like you have better connection, better.
Yeah, so I think that one exercise can certainly be better than another as that statement. And then I also think that there's a very big time element to that where an exercise can be better than another right now, but that can change based on how long you're doing it for, how much volume of it you've been doing, and when the last time was that you had performed another variation. For example, I could do, or in my last massing phase, I kept the flat cambered barbell bench press in for maybe 4 months. It's a really long time. And that exercise is very good for me. I like it a lot. My chest responds to it. I'm strong at it. A lot of check boxes. But the longer that I did that movement, probably the less effective it became, which was ultimately a point where I decided to swap it to where if I swap that for, let's say, a flat dumbbell press, now the flat dumbbell press is probably a better movement for me than the flat cambered bar bench press. Simply because of the time element, because of the staleness element, because of maybe some little niggles or whatnot, or aches because I've been doing the same exact grip movement pattern for 4 months. So I think context is very, very important to saying one exercise is better than another. One can be. So for most people, we could just use an example. A flat camber bar bench press, so long as they have mobility to do so for hypertrophy, is better than a barbell bench press for most people. That statement, I think, is fair to say in that appropriate context. However, if you do a flat camber bar bench press for 5 months, By month 5 or month 4, even, I'd make the case that another flat pressing movement is better than that cambered bar bench press because of how long you've been doing it.
And one of the questions that I want to ask you is, how can you consider that that exercise can be better at that time? I
Great
mean,
question.
the lack of progress that you are saying that makes one better than the other, for example.
Yeah, yeah. Can I rephrase your question also as saying what makes an exercise go from good to not as good?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So yeah. So it's the same thing. So that can be defined as the amount of volume that is required to elicit the same stimulus that the exercise used to elicit earlier on. So if I start doing a movement that I've not done for a while, maybe 2 sets will get me where I need to go, with 4 sets a few weeks later being like the penultimate amount of volume. But if I do that stuff long enough, all being that I don't have any joint awkwardness or aches or anything, now I might need between 4 and 6 sets to do that movement. And I'm likely using the heaviest loads that I can use, that I'm capable of at the time. So it's likely going to be a lot more fatiguing physically and mentally and take a lot more time. So this sort of triumvirate of amount of volume required, psychological and physical toll that's being put on me, and time to actually do the movement. These three things can sort of mold together to ultimately give you something where you say, is the most efficient thing I could be doing? Could I be better off doing other things that disrupt the target musculature the same or more with less?
Yeah, makes sense. But in my opinion, if I can say it, we need as well to be aware of the novelty and the difficulty to progress after like 3 months of doing one exercise as well. So I think most of the people try to do variation because of that. Because when you're doing a novelty, when you're doing a new exercise, you feel great. You feel your, even for, like you said, for a chest press, you feel your chest a lot more than before. So I think people should be aware of that, of
I
those two
think I
things.
think that it's a very good thought experiment that someone should do to be able to dig into variation versus doubling down on a movement because it's good, right? So, and this ratio looks different for everyone, but if you're doing a movement for 1 month and then swapping it out, you probably might be better off to spend more time doing said movement so you can make some gains and actually get good at it and improve. But at the same time, if you're doing the same movement for 4 or 5 months, I don't know. I think that you'd probably be better off cutting it at that point and swapping over to something else. And again, I don't know what the scene in Portugal is like, but I'm in America and there are fully stocked gyms everywhere. I know a lot of people train at home. I know a lot of people train at CrossFit boxes, but a lot of people train at really good gyms. There's no reason to act like you don't have all of these other exercises that you can be doing. If you're on a barbell bench press and you're benching for 5, 6 months at a time, like when you have a Smith machine, when you have dumbbells, when you have another kind of bar, when you have a machine, when you have cables, don't act like they're not there. You should be using those, right? Like, number one, you'll probably have reduced injury risk because you're constantly varying, not constantly, but you're varying the movements a little bit more. Training will be a lot more fun. You'll be much more excited to train. And I think it's just an overall positive experience. So for me, on average, anywhere from 2 to 4 months is how long I stick with a movement for.
Yeah. Thank you for the
Yeah.
explanation. And for curiosity, the gyms in America are much, much better than in Portugal. So,
Yeah. What are the
unfortunately,
gyms like in Portugal?
I think that they are too much commercial gyms. So the machines are very basic. I don't know how to say it, but they are not for like bodybuilders, if I can say it. They are like for trying to, for beginners, if I can say it. It's hard to explain, but they are. I even went to the UK last year, and it was completely different. The machines were much better. And I think most of them to me are from America that went to the UK. So you are lucky.
So I don't doubt that. But to that point, even if you're training at a gym like yours, of course, this is probably body part dependent, but let's just use chest as an example. Most gyms will have barbell, dumbbells, Smith machine, maybe a decent chest press machine. We're already talking 4 variations here. We didn't even get into if your gym has a specialty bar. We didn't even get into intensity techniques. We didn't even get into varying rep ranges. We didn't even get into pausing versus not pausing.
Yeah.
Variation abounds. There are so many opportunities in just saying, I'm going to do barbell bench press for sets of 6 to 10. That's it. Bury me here. That's not you can do it, but I think that it's short-sighted, and I think that let's not act like we're not physique people. There's so many ways that we can do this.
Yeah, I completely agree. Shimmy, if you can tell us, you already tell us a brief explanation, but what do you consider an exercise to be good or even bad, if you can say?
Yeah. What do I think? What's my checklist to consider if an exercise is good? Okay. Does it yield a significant pump, soreness, and disruption to the musculature that I am aiming to target? Does it yield joint or connective tissue pain in somewhere else other than where I want that pain to be? Does it take a very long time to do, i.e., is it just very fatiguing? Am I going to do a set of stiff-legged deadlifts with the barbell and then lay on the floor for 10 minutes? Or am I going to do a set of machine lateral raises and a minute and a half later be able to do another set of 15, as an example? And does it take a long time to set up? I have more for you. Does it take a long time to set up? If I have to go to a machine and I have to fix all the settings and I have to add the plates, then I have to warm up for it, then I have to do this, if that exercise checks all the other boxes, fine, but otherwise, probably not worth it. And then also, is this an exercise that's taken a lot? And this is something that's not talked about so much.
Fatigue?
No. If it's taken, literally, when you
Ah,
go to the gym, is it always being used? This matters, believe it or not. Not everyone is like you or like myself, where we make our own schedules. We can probably train either whenever we want or we have a range of time we can train. A lot of people have to train at 5 p.m. after work or they have to train at 7 a.m. These are busy times in the gym. Are you really going to program a barbell bench press for multiple sets where you may not be able to do that, right? Like, are you going to program high bar squats for 4 sets of 6 to 10 with then down sets afterwards at 5 p.m.? Maybe, but you got to think about that. And this is something that's not talked about so much. And I think it's relevant. I do think it's relevant.
yeah, I agree with that. Um, I saw one of the content that you made was about this, and I want to talk about. Is it possible or good to do the same exercise more than one time per week? For example, like
Per
chest press,
week or
bar.
per set or per session?
Sorry, I meant per week. Sorry, Shimmy.
Yeah, no
Sorry.
worries. No worries. So, same answer. I'll just give you more detail. It still needs to be stimulated for the target musculature, and you still need to want to do it. So, again, even though with beginners, right, we talk about adherence, we talk about you need to be excited to keep doing the thing. Adherence for intermediate and advanced people is just as real. Just because we've all been training for 5, 10, 15 years, you still need to want to do everything you're doing. Maybe not at the same level that you were, same passion when you were a beginner, you didn't know anything, but you still need to want to do it. And the trouble with doing the same movement multiple times a week, unless you program it intelligently, is the movement just gets stale faster. So if you're doing one movement, a certain exercise once a week, you might be able to run the movement for 3 months and love it, be wide-eyed and excited to do it. If you do it twice a week, you might only be able to run it for half the time or 2 months and be like, fuck this shit. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm sick of it. There are a few ways to get around it. Way number 1, rep ranges. Change the rep range. That's a very easy one. 5 to 10 on one day, 10 to 20 on another day. They feel different enough that you'll still be excited to do it. Number 2, the way that you perform the movement. You may perform the movement with a slow eccentric one day. You may perform the other movement you may perform the movement on the other day with a more just controlled eccentric. Maybe one day you perform with end range pauses, pauses at the bottom, pauses at the top. Maybe the other day you don't. Maybe one day you perform the movement with straight sets. The other day you might perform it in a giant set fashion or with drop sets or lengthened partials, something
Mhm.
like that. Different enough where you'll be excited to do it while it's still being very stimulative for the target musculature.
Yeah, it makes sense. Uh, the final question that I will be asking about exercise selection is what were the most important things that you changed about the exercise selection in the last few years, like 2 to 5, if you can answer?
Yeah, I absolutely can. I've doubled down on movements that feel really, really good for me. And I've removed any movements that do not. And because I've, of course, done infinite amount of exercises at this point for extended periods of time, I have a pretty decent handle of what that is. That's number one. Number two, even though I do write my programs with mesocycles, macrocycles, just like you do with your clients, just like I do for my clients, I recognize that those numbers are arbitrary now. And I will not force myself to stay within the confines of that progression if a movement doesn't feel good. This is huge. This is something that I never did before. So this is a big change. Example. Let's say I have leg presses and I have them programmed. One mesocycle, bang. Second mesocycle, bang. I plan to do them again, third mesocycle. I am in week 2. All of a sudden, they feel shit. I give myself one more try. If I don't like it, I pull it out. Even if I had planned to eat in the middle of the mesocycle. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, all of this is arbitrary. I said that I was going to do it for 12 weeks, 15 weeks, whatever it is. But why would I keep doing it if there's something better out there? And I think that this is something that's not talked about enough, and I'll tell you why. Because this doesn't work on social media, because this is all context. This is only something that you can, I think, be able to communicate or talk about when it's either you're either communicating in long form or if you're with a client. Because you can't tell someone in an Instagram post, well, if a movement doesn't feel good after a couple weeks, just stop doing it. They're going to be like, well, it always feels like shit after week 4 because it's hard, so I'm going to stop doing it, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't work. But if you're the kind of person like you, like myself, like a lot of people listening, where we clearly care a great deal. Motivation's never a problem for us. We all want to train hard. So if you're going into the gym and you have a movement that you've been doing for a few weeks or a few months and all of a sudden it doesn't feel good, that's valid. That's useful. I don't discount that. I'm not warrior status where I say, you have to do it, you have to push through. No, I don't. I chose to be here. I can leave whenever I want. I don't care. Right? So if I'm going to do it, I need to want to do it and it needs to feel good. So I do still pre-plan, of course, my training blocks, my weeks, my months. I always have the workout planned when I go in, but I will make changes intra-session more often now, more often than I ever did before. That's huge.
Yeah. If I can give an example that you at least you made me remember, when I was doing skull crushers with dumbbells, I had I train in my home gym, so I have dumbbells of 10 kilos and 15 kilos. So I planned on my training to do with 10 kilos, to do like 10 to 20 reps, but I did like 15 to 20, and they felt like I felt nothing. And I did with the 15 kilos, and I did like 6 reps. That's nothing. Like it's very few, but the pump and the disruption was crazy, and I was like, okay, this makes no sense, but it's awesome at the same time. So I think I understand what you're saying. Most times, things that don't make sense, but give us better results, and I think we need to stay with them.
I think if I was to summarize it for you in a more succinct fashion, it's the idea that so many people are slaves to the program and what's predetermined, and they disregard what actually happens when the ball's thrown up in the air and it's game time, so to speak, and the
Yeah,
game is now being played. Both are valid. You need to have a plan going in. You have to have a sets, reps, exercise plan when you go in and know what your goals are, what you're going to do. But when the rubber meets the road, if something feels a little bit off, or if something even feels on, like amazing, Don't just ignore that for the sake of your predetermined plan. Use that data. Use the mix of both. So, right? So we call that auto-regulating, right? It's a fancy
Yeah.
term. So you need to be able to auto-regulate as much as you need to be able to predetermine what you're going to do. And I think myself included and so many others, they so over-index on the predetermination of the workout that they fail to actually act in real time with what's going on and be able to course correct as needed.
Even if you are not saying they don't have the knowledge to act in that
It's
time.
not that they don't have the knowledge, actually. It's more so that I believe that they believe too much in the predetermined plan that they must adhere to whatever is written down because that's the gospel, that's what it's said, that's what makes logical sense to them numerically, and that's what they have to do. And I'm here for that conversation, and I think for most people that's valid. But I also think that it is important when you're in the training session, if something doesn't feel good or if something feels really good, to note that, be aware of that, and act on that and use that data in concordance with whatever plan you have. So in my if I'm going into a training session and I say I have 3 sets of leg press planned as an example in the 10 to 15 rep range, and I have to do it, I don't know, let's call it week 5, so I'm 1 rep in reserve or 0 or going to failure. If after 3 sets I still feel fantastic or something, I'm going to do a 4th. Or if I know that, or if I have, let's say I added 7 kilos to the machine from last week, but I matched or I beat reps and I still feel great, my next set, I might add an additional 2 to 5 kilos. I
Yeah.
won't just stick at the 7 just cause. These are just little examples. And I'm
Yeah.
not doing this every time, but here and there, I think this is important.
Yeah, thanks for for explaining and the example. I think it made it clear. Shimi, we can go to the volume now, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Since we have many studies talking about volume landmarks with different takes, most of the coaches train with about 10 to 20 sets per week, or they recommend. How do you manage the volume for a client from a beginning to an advanced standpoint?
So most people that I work with never get to 20 sets of anything a week. I find with myself, and I don't know if you're the same, so you speak to this, and I know a lot of my fellow online coaches, the biggest thing that we do is we end up dropping everyone's volume. Most time when someone comes to work with me, whatever volume they're doing, they never end up doing that kind of volume once we start because we so much double down on technique, movement quality, and then effort under movement quality. And once you kind of nail both of those things down, for most people, the volume seems to drop because they just get more out of less. Have you experienced that too?
Yeah, yeah.
Like almost across the board, right? Like never have I ever had a client come in and I had them do more volume than what they were already doing. That's number one. Number two, the requirement of 10 to 20 sets a week per body part, I think it's fair short form. Everyone seemingly says it in the evidence-based phase. I mean, if somebody asks me like, oh, what's my average weekly volume per body part? That's probably what I say, 10 to 18 or 10 to 20. But again, and this is funny that I'm coming back to this, but again, I find even in the intermediate and advanced ranks, adherence to be above all. And who cares if I can bring my quads to 25 sets or something for 1 week? If after that 1 week, I don't want to train anymore, or I just need a maintenance phase, or I just need 10 days of deloading, I would rather stay at volumes that I know that a person can hit and have them keep training and have them be so excited about training in whatever way that looks like. And they keep doing it. So my volumes for myself, and of course for the people that I work with, have actually dropped, come down slightly. Slightly. It's not like I was having everyone at 20 sets and now they're at 8. No. But on average, I would say for me, I'm probably anywhere from 10 to 16 to 18 sets a week for most body parts. Whereas before, it was probably more like 20 to 24 at the top end. And I was just finding that number one was junk volume. And number two, you spend so much time in the gym that's not a pleasant experience anymore. We all love training, but we all love training until we're spending 2 hours a day every day. Come on, come on. No, we have other things to do. It's not. It's not the vibe. So
Like eating.
yeah, or whatever. Right. Exactly. So I think that the 10 to 20 is a nice dinner party recommendation, but it's probably more like 8 to 15 for majority of people. I think you'll probably see the best gains there. And I'm just not so convinced that the higher volumes are the best thing because I find the higher volumes are not able to be maintained. And the greatest thing to do when it comes to training is not stopping. It's never about the person who has the best training plan, it's the person who has the best training career. Right? So the higher volume stuff oftentimes is what kind of like leads to a lot of wear and tear, right? Like little injuries and whatnot. It leads to you having to take breaks more often. Whereas if you're staying in more the moderate rep range, the moderate set range, you can kind of just keep going. Sure, you have your deloads, you have your maintenance phases, but I just find that training is just more enjoyable, it's more exciting, it's more fun. And that's very important. Very important.
Even if I think, at least for me, most of my clients are people that just want to look good. So expecting them to go to that higher volume, I think that's a mistake for most of people.
Who are the general people that you coach and the general people that listen to this podcast? What's the demographic?
I have coaches and I have normal people that go to the gym, but most are, I think it's 50-50.
Normal people, like not fitness people. They just want to be in
No,
shape.
no, fitness, yeah, people that just go to the gym like 3 to 5 times, and coaches.
Yeah, exactly. So for these kind of people, they don't want to spend their life being in the gym. They're not necessarily, yeah. So for them, I think staying in those more moderate rep ranges will probably get them almost all of the gains they were ever going to get, and they'll have way more fun doing it.
The next part that I want to ask you, or at least your opinion, how do you manage the volume with the frequency of training? I think we saw some studies talking about, I think it was like last month, saying that going one time or going 2 times per week was almost the same. But I want to know your opinion on that.
Yeah. So I think going 1 time a week or 2 times a week is probably very similar if the volume is equated. I mean, hey, the bro split is the most common split ever. The most jack people have generally done bro splits. Now, obviously, there's many caveats to that, but I don't think that that's inadmissible in terms of actionable data. So clearly, it works, right? In some kind of way. Does it work the best? You and I would probably say no. We probably think there's something more efficient and better, but we're not going to say it doesn't work. I think that for most people, training any body part anywhere from 2 to 3 times a week is probably the most reasonable thing. Bigger body parts twice a week, smaller body parts 2 or 3 times a week. I think it is the most logical and it is the most efficient way to go about things. So evenly spreading your volume over 2 or 3 sessions allows you to never do too much for one body part. So you're always excited to do the thing. The effort and the movement quality is really, really high because you only have so much you need to do. You're not going full send, so to speak, on each body part where you're like, I'm so sick of back training, oh my God, another set. No, no. If you're doing anywhere from 4 to 10 sets in a session for one body part, spreading that over 1 to 3 exercises, preferably 2 to 3 exercises, it's not that much. It's easy to focus on. It's easy to be really, really locked into. And I think it is the most efficient way to go about things from a volume allocation standpoint.
Yeah, makes sense. At least for me, I agree with that. Um, Shimmy, I want to ask you, what were the most important things that you changed about the volume in the last few years? Maybe if you can tell us, like, if in your opinion, in your training, have you increased the volume, or with time did you decrease it?
Good question. I have, by definition, reduced the amount of volume per body part that I allocate for training. I've also likely reduced the amount of sets per exercise that I would do in favor of actually increasing my exercise variation on a weekly basis. Let's call it that. So I very seldom do any more than 5 sets for one exercise. Very, very rarely.
Okay.
For smaller body parts like calves and lateral raises, I will. That might be about it. And I found for myself anywhere from 3 to 5 sets for one exercise to have basically done the task. Whatever that exercise was intended to do, that's what the fuck it did in 3 to 5 sets. And after that, moving on to another exercise. Whereas in the past, I may have done many more sets or straight sets and down sets for the same movement because it was good. Now I believe, at least for myself, that having a bit more exercise variation is probably a little bit more of an intelligent play. But that's at my stage of the game. 15 years into training, obviously advanced based on those metrics. For somebody that's more beginner, again, I think the volume is quite low, anyways. Like just having one exercise for a body part in a session and training that body part 2 to 3 times a week would probably be the most fruitful because they can double down on really learning the movement and every single rep, how it should feel and how to push. And once you're an intermediate or early stage advanced, I'd say probably 1 or 2 exercises for the same body part in a session 2 to 3 times a week, or probably twice a week, is probably great. And then when you're advanced, yeah, anywhere from 1 to 3. I would never do more than 3 exercises for the same body part in one session. That I would never do. I just think that's too much. You need to conserve variation there. You're better off doubling down on the exercises that you're already doing.
Yeah, it makes sense. Shimmy, I want to ask you for the final question. What are the most common mistakes from the topics that we talked about, the volume, the exercise selection, and technique that you see most of the people make on the gym?
Okay. Let's do one mistake for each. So one for
Yeah.
volume, one for exercise selection, and one for technique. So the first mistake, most common mistake that I see for volume is most likely doing too much of it without putting a premium on technique and effort. Effort under the requirement of technique. So most times people will say, I do 8 sets of squats. Let me see your squats. This makes sense why you do 8 sets of squats, because you suck. Because you don't push hard, or you don't go all the way down, or you don't control your eccentric, or whatever. So I would say that's too much volume. That's number one. And the exercise selection standpoint, I would say people picking exercises because they believe they need to do the exercise rather than picking exercises that feel the best for them. And I don't blame them on this one because this is logical. They see people they look up to either from a physique aspiration standpoint or from an intellectual standpoint or from a content creating standpoint, and they say, so and so person does
I'm
this
pointing
movement.
at you. Sorry.
Huh?
I'm sorry. I'm pointing at you.
Yeah. They say, absolutely relevant, valid. They say, so and so person does this movement. He looks great. He's funny, or he's cool. It must be good. I must do this movement too. There's something to be said. I mean, depending on the person, like, I've thought my shit through more than most people. I think what I'm doing is good, but it's good for me. But as you know, this is just a very small side. Whenever I post up, I never say this is the best movement to do. I always say this is worth trying, I think, but you may not like it. I like it, but that doesn't mean you're going to like it. Try it. I'm always big on saying that. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So you can call it parroting, right? Just picking the movements that they see their heroes do or people they look up to without thinking it through for themselves. And then on the technique standpoint, getting into the nuances, I definitely think people are still not controlling the eccentric like they need to. Do they need to be box turtle slug like me and take 4 seconds on the eccentric? No. But you need to control it. You need to take 2 seconds to do it. And I still see people rushing their eccentrics. I still see people not going to their fullest ranges of motion just because. And another one, actually, which is A little different. I also see people forcing ranges of motion because they, again, believe that they have to when they probably shouldn't. There are some people that, again, because they see people do whatever they do on social media, they read the research, they think it's a logical thing to do, they force themselves into these grandiose ranges of motion that they cannot control. And for these people, they are actually going to get hurt, or at least just not grow the muscle that they think, because they're shifting the loads over to other body parts in order to be able to just manage the load that they're doing.
And most of the cases, if, even for example, with doing like a pauses or also eccentric or uh, performing with better technique, most of the cases you need to lower the weight, and most people think that's like downgrading their training, right? They don't want to
I
make
mean,
that
dude,
change.
that's like that whole statement. They need to lower the weight. That's everything. That is the bugaboo with everyone. If you could just lower the weight and just use an example of everything that you want to do. I made this post a long time ago. I should repost it, like 2 years ago. Almost all people's justifications for what they do is so they can use heavier weight. If you really, really think about it, it's always that. Range of motion, lower rep range, longer rest period, compound movement that looks cool for social media. The tension argument of hypertrophy is most manifested through mechanical tension. I'm not necessarily arguing that all the way, but most of you guys take that shit to tax because you just want to use heavier weight and find a way to justify it. We all know what you're doing. That's why you're doing it. We know. So I think that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. One of the memories that I had from this moment was that, like, if I see the weights that I did like 5 to 7 years ago, I'm using the same weights, but I see my technique now, it's much better than before, and that's, I think, from learning, and I hopefully I learned to train better with that. Shimi, if I can ask you the last question that I want from you, and it was one of the points that you said before about the tracking. Do you recommend, or do you find it one of the most important pieces for a good physique, tracking your food?
Yeah, I think that it's very important for somebody to do for a certain period of time. Do I think someone needs to track all of their food by the gram or by the ounce in perpetuity forever and ever? I don't think so. But I think having a period of at least a few months where you diligently track everything, I know it's going to suck. I know it's going to be annoying. I know it's going to be awkward. I think it pays so many dividends from a knowledge standpoint of just understanding portions, understanding how much you need to be eating, understanding what a certain amount looks like is just really integral. It's really important to do. I do think that. I really do. Now, of course, you can be like me, aside from this massing phase. Like I track, even though I've done this for years and I pretty much know what everything looks, I still track everything just to be sure, just to cross all my T's, dot my I's. You don't need to do that. But I think being very serious about your tracking for, let's call it at least 3 months, huge, very important.
And how do you explain that to your clients that don't want to track?
I mean, I just end up doing it for them.
Okay.
Right? At the end of the day, it's like, if you don't want to do it, that's not a problem. Send me your meals and I will do it for you.
Okay.
You know? At the end of the day, right? Like, you're paying me money and we have a mutual goal here. So we need to hit these goals. And whatever it takes on your side or my side to be able to get you to hit these goals in the easiest way possible is what we're going to do.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it's very much so. I mean, look, a lot of the stuff that we do is like, for all intents and purposes, it's babysitting, it's hand holding, it's the accountability. So many online coaches, I mean, everybody runs their business differently. So many online coaches believe that as soon as they get their clients, it's just going to be, I'm sending them their programming and it's going to be amazing. And they're going to send me all their form check videos. I mean, of course, it depends on your demographic, but a lot of the times it's just making sure that people are just doing what they're doing, checking in. Did you eat? Did you train? Send me the videos of it. Send me your meals. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Did you get to the gym yet? Get to the gym now. Are you there? But you know what I mean? Like, It's that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. But hey, people pay a premium for that. That's important.
yeah, it's our job.
Yeah,
We can't complain it.
I'm not complaining.
I know. I'm joking. And I'm sorry for pointing at you before. I hope you don't mind.
No, of course not,
Joke.
man. I get it. I get these messages. I get tagged all the time of people like, "Oh, I did the shimmy row or the shimmy squat or whatever." And like, look, man, if you guys love it and it messes you up like it messes me up, I am here for it. I am here for it. But just doing it just because I do it. No, you're better than that. If it feels amazing for you, keep doing it. But hey, there's movements that I do that I like that you guys may not like, and that's very valid, and vice versa. You might have some exercises that destroy you. If you were like, Shim, try it, I'm like, this shit sucks.
Yeah, but I think if I can give my opinion, and I think from what I see from your content, the most part that I like it's the effort that you give in the exercise and not the. Of course, I like your technique, but the effort is the most important thing that I see from that, and I think most of people also see that. If I can.
I hope so. I really hope that I mean, number one, that's very cool, so thank you. But that both come across because you can't have one without the other. It's the ability to exhibit surgical textbook level technique with effort. Because a lot of people can do amazing technique and big range of motion or whatever, but if it's not hard, then who cares? To a certain extent. And vice versa. Some people can train insanely hard, but if the technique is crapola, then what does it matter? It's the ability to wheel to
Combine.
synthesize both, to combine both, that I think is the recipe, obviously, for physique success, if I would say so myself.
To get the six pack, almost
12 pack.
one can dream.
Yes.
Shimmy, I think we'll end our episode here. Thank you a lot for being here and your time. It was a lot of fun as well. You are a funny guy and a very strong guy as well. And it was awesome to have you, man.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And if you want to have me on again, just let me know.